Have you ever looked at two columns of numbers in Excel and wondered if they are actually related? Instead of guessing from raw data in a table, we can visualize the relationship instantly using a scatter diagram. Hello and welcome to Ben Academy. In this video, I'll show you step by step how to draw a scatter plot in Excel and how to interpret it correctly. By the end of this tutorial, you will be able to create a professional diagram with scatter chart and understand whether your variable have a positive, negative, or no correlation. Let's get started. I'll show you with some examples and I will introduce the options in drawing a scatter diagram in Excel. Let me first define what's the scatter data and a scatter diagram. A scatter diagram, also called as a scatter plot, is a graph used to show the relationship between two variables. Each point in such graph that you can see here represents one observation. For example, if we record study hours and exam scores for some students, each point in this diagram represents each of the students, and they will appear as one point on this chart. The position of each point depends on the value of the first variable that is placed on x-axis and also the value of the second variable that is represented in y-axis. Instead of reading rows of numbers, we visually observe whether a pattern exists or not. Scatter diagrams are widely used in statistics, engineering, business analysis, scientific researches, and they are especially important before performing correlation or regression analysis. So what should we do to draw a scatter diagram? For example, suppose we have some data like this. These are time and force. Let me first delete this chart. Before drawing the scatter diagram, we must understand the axis, which one is x-axis and which one is y-axis. The x-axis usually represents the independent variable, but the y-axis represents the dependent variable. For this specific data we are working on, time is independent variable and force is dependent to the time. So time should be represented on x-axis, that is independent variable, and force should be represented as y variable. This is the rule that typically is correct, and in many cases we represent the x-axis for independent variable and y-axis for dependent one. For drawing a scatter line, we should first select the data x and y. It's much better if the x values is written in the left side and y values on the right side. In this way, the default selection by Excel would be correct. If you select hold the data with keyboard like this by Control Shift and down, after going to the Insert tab, you can see a part like this, charts. One of them that is represented as this icon, you can see that it's Insert Scatter. You can open it. Different types of scatter charts are visible here. Usually in the most popular case, we usually prefer to use scatter points like this. We can also add a line to connect two consecutive points with a line with this scatter, or we can also ignore drawing the points and only draw a line. In some cases, scatter with smooth line is preferred. And in some other cases, we may prefer to draw a straight line instead of a smooth line. And we can also remove the points from the view and use the straight lines as the scatter diagram. So these are the 5 different types of scatter diagrams. We now first prefer to draw as points like this. In this way, you can see that diagram is by default drawn. First, you can see a plus button here. If you click on it, you will see something here. The first one is related to axis. Now axes are selected, and if you deselect it, you will see that the axis will be removed from your scatter data. In some cases, you may prefer to not show the axis, but in most of the cases, we need axis, so we now prefer to show them by selecting them. If you click on this arrow, you will see that you can select each axis, primary horizontal or primary vertical, that is y-axis, be selected to be shown or not. And there's a more option here. If you select it, a menu will be open for you, and some other settings are available here that I will describe them later for you. The next item here is axis titles. You can select axis title to show and to modify the axis title for X and Y. By pressing on the arrow button, you will see again the same options. You can remove each one you don't want. The next item is chart title. In some cases, you prefer to not show a chart title in your diagram. Now I don't want to show a chart title on the diagram, so I will remove it. Data labels is another option. In the diagrams that you may have few points, it can be a good option. Or you can show the data label for some specific points. But if you select the data label for all the points, it will be so crowded and it's not visibly prefer to do this. If you click on arrow, you can see something to display the labels. Here it's so crowded and you may be confused if I want to describe them. I will introduce them later. But these are all related to representation and showing the labels in the center, left, right, or using a callout or any other things. The next item here is error bar. Error bar is used in some cases if your data represents more than 1 point, and you may have an average, you may have a standard deviation, and it's preferred to show the range of the data this point is representing. If you select it, you can adjust what's the error bar. You can see some options like standard error, percentage, standard deviation, and more options. If I select more option, a menu will be open for you, and you can adjust the type of error bars you want to display. I will describe it for you later. Another option here is grid line. These lines in the X and Y axis are grid lines. You can remove them if you don't want to show them. Let's first remove the error bars and data labels from the diagram. It's so crowded and it's not visibly good. So if I click on grid lines, you can select which grid line be shown. We have two types of grid lines. If you select major grid lines like this in horizontal and vertical direction, it's a default show of the scatter graph. You can also add the grid line, and you can define what's the spacing between these grid lines. I will tell you in a menu later. Other item here is legend, and you can adjust the legend, the place of legend to be right, top, left, or bottom. In the cases you have drawn more than one diagram in a single chart, it's better to have a legend, and you can represent your diagrams with different colors or different shapes. So you can define which color represents which data, and it's very practical in defining the diagrams. The other item is related to trend line. You can apply and add a trend line on your data and find the equation of that trend line, and I will introduce them for you. So you can add some elements to the chart with this menu. The other option here is chart style. You can select it to change the style of your chart. There are some predefined options by Excel. For example, if you prefer to write with a black background and transparent diagrams like this, you can choose it, or some other things that are predefined by Excel, or other colors. You can change the color of the diagram. You can manually change them, and every color or every style you want you can apply, but these are predefined options and you can select them. Some of them are beautiful in some cases, and you may prefer to use them. The other item here is chart filters. If you have more than one series and more than one diagrams with different colors, with different styles, you can deselect them temporarily. You can remove them or add them, or you can adjust your diagram like this. If you right click on the plot area like this, you can see some options here. You can change the chart type. I told you you can change it afterwards. So if you decided to add a line, for example, you can select this one, or if you want to remove the points and only you want to show a smooth line or a straight line, you can use these options. Or you can select to show both markers and lines in a single diagram like this. For example, I've changed my mind and I want to show the diagram like this, so I will click on this smooth line. You can modify the titles like this. You can write simply time with the unit of second, and you can also write a title for y-axis. You can write force with the unit of Newton. You can change the font and color, or you can make them bold. Automatically you can see that a menu is opened here. I will close it and I will describe it later. If you go to home menu, you can change every part, or you can change the font and style of every point, or you can change whole the parts. I will now want to change the title of y-axis. If I change the font, you can see here that it's possible. You can increase the size, you can make it bold and italic or anything. And for the numbers also you can do this. You can change it to any font you want. You can make it bold or increase the size. You can also change the precision of the numbers, but not from this area. I will say how you can do this. Or you can change the whole diagram. You can change the font and size of whole diagram like this by selecting a specific size font, and you can make it bold or not. I want to adjust the axis now. If you right click on the axis, you can see some options here. One of them is format axis. If you click on it, you can see that a menu is opened here, and you saw this before, but I closed it to describe it now. Axis options, there are some bounds for each axis. For x-axis, now we are adjusting the minimum and maximum. You can change the minimum and maximum. For example, I want to show the diagram until 900, so you can see that it's changed, but automatically the minimum is also changed. Maybe you don't want to use a minimum like this. I will change it to 0 again, and you can see that it's shown as here. You can change the major. For example, if you want to represent the data every 100 seconds, you can add it, or you can also define minor ones, and later you can add grid lines. You can also adjust the axis, and if you change it from automatic and select axis value, if you enter something like this 100, you can see that the diagram is shifted, and the y-axis is now written on the 100 instead of 0. Or you can use the maximum axis value, and now you can see that the y-axis, that is vertical axis, crosses the maximum value, and it's kind of the reverse representation of y-axis here. But the default is using the y-axis crossing 0 at the left. You can change the units of the axis. You can use like this, and you can say that it's 100, 200, and it's a simplified representation. You can use thousands, or you can use the numbers like this. If you have a scientific numbers, in some cases it's practical, but the values here are not too long, and I prefer to use none here. If you want to draw a logarithmic scale, you can simply click on logarithmic scale, and you can see that it's now changed. You can change the base of logarithm, and right now I don't want to draw a logarithmic scale, and after changing it, you can see that it's changed because logarithm of 1 is 0, and it's changed a bit, so you can adjust it again to 0. Yeah, and it's corrected now. You can select this option value in reverse order. You can see that the diagram is drawn in a reverse manner. In some cases, you may prefer to draw a diagram like this. The other option here is tick marks. Tick mark is something that you may use for showing the values on axis. I will show you. If you add tick mark for major type inside, you can see that something is added, but now the grid line is shown, so you cannot see the tick marks. If I remove the grid line, you can see, yeah, there are some tick marks here inside the plot area. If you choose the other one that is outside, the tick marks will be drawn towards the numbers outside the plot area. And you can also use cross to draw it in both sides of the axis. You can adjust the labels of the axis. Now by default is a next axis, and it's a default representation of the numbers of the x-axis. If you select the other things like high, you can see that the numbers are written at top, or you can use low, that is similar to next axis, and you can use none, that there's no values, there's no label for the axis. And you can adjust the number. I told you you can define the number of precisions in some fractional numbers, or if it's a date or a text or anything, you can change it. You can change the format of data like this. And this is a number, so I choose number, and I can define the decimal places. Now my numbers are integer, so no decimal is necessary. I will write 0, or I can make it as it was before. You can use 1000 separator with comma. You can define how negative numbers be shown with red color, or in the parentheses, or in the parentheses and red color. We can also add some other formats as you want, and it's another option that you can use.